Hey everyone. In this episode, I get a chance to sit down and talk with Chuck Bankoff. He's the owner over at Creative Webworks, which is an agency that focuses on a very niche market specializing in increasing enrollment for schools. Chuck has worked in the marketing space for decades. And in this episode, I tap his brain on a bunch of topics, including how he helps clients better, how he collects and manages data, and also his tactics for getting clients thinking about marketing as an investment rather than as an expense. These are all things that we get into. We dive pretty deep into a lot of these types of topics, and it's really going to be a lot of fun. So let's get into it. So, Chuck, it's great to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, Eric. I'm glad you guys reached out. I've been working with both Constant Contact and SharpSpring for years.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? I mean, we were going to originally try to connect up at the LA event that we had for the B2B Expo, and that didn't quite turn out the way we wanted it to. But it sounds like we're going to be able to have a good conversation here,
Yeah.
so that's good. Yeah, so maybe we start with that. So maybe if you could just tell the audience a little bit about you and a little bit about what you do, we can provide some context and we can jump in with a few questions.
Yeah. I'm the director of web services, also the owner and president of Creative Webworks, creative with a K. I founded this company in November of '99. Right. So, internet years are like dog years. That's like a long time ago in real people time. And
Yes.
at the time I was working for Honeywell, right, in aerospace industry. And if you know anything about that industry here in Southern California, everyone lives and dies by the contract. So there's Boeing and McDonnell Douglas and subcontractors. And
Yeah.
if Boeing has a contract, everybody eats that night,
Yeah.
right? If they lose a contract, then everyone's being let, but there's nowhere to go, right? Because
Right.
because if you're in that industry, everyone's either hiring or laying off. And I had at that point already been working in the aerospace industry for uh, almost 20 years at that point. And I just got tired of that, right? And so I would found myself in a position. I did what was called special projects, and my special project was trying to figure out how to lay myself off, right? And everyone I knew, right? So I'm going, this could be a sign. So I think, well, I'm going to do, I got to look into something else. I'm not getting any younger, right? And so trying to condense the story a little bit, this internet thing, this could be interesting. Keep in mind, this is like late 1999, right? It's
Yeah.
like the internet wasn't as quite as a mainstay as it is now. But I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, this thing has some potential, right? So I started going in that direction. Eventually, they offered what's called a RIF, a reduction in force, right? Voluntary. So I raised my hand. I took the package, which was amazing. I've been working there long enough. They gave me a full year's worth of salary, vacation for. I'm going. This is the way to start a new business, right? Having them pay me to start a new business, and back then, basically we were doing website development. That was before WordPress or Wix or any of these WYSIWYG editor type of things, and
Yeah.
it was a unique skill set to be able to develop a website. And my biggest challenge then was convincing a business owner that they need a website. I would literally they'd say stuff like, website, we don't need a website. We've been doing this for 40 years and we have a pager or we have a fax machine. So at that particular time, selling a website, convincing a business they needed a website was not an easy task. A little bit different now. Um, anyway, I started growing the company from there because right around that time frame, Google made the internet more feasible, and we got into search engine optimization at a very early age, back where it wasn't as mysterious as it is now. About 2004, Facebook made social media a thing. A little later than that, HubSpot came out with, they coined the phrase inbound marketing, and then other companies such as SharpSpring, started adapting that as well, and we made that part of our service suite during that time. We inadvertently worked with a school, right? And had such great success, we started building up a reputation. And now we're an education marketing agency. You know, we work with a lot of K through 12 schools, charter schools and private schools. And now that is our niche market.
And so, what is an example of what you do when you come in and you're like, let's say a specific ed tech, or sorry, an educational company, can't speak today. A specific school comes to you and says, "Hey, we need help. We need something." Like, what are they typically coming to you for? What are they looking for, like an overhaul in their site design, or are they looking for marketing automation to help them drive new enrollment? Like, what are they typically coming to you for?
Uh, they don't know, right? What they're coming for. There's two things. One, they may have a certain sense that their website is not as good as it should be. And I don't mean looking pretty. I mean that they read their own information and go, well, I'm not sure we're saying this right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure families who are looking for an educational opportunity for their children, if this website is doing. That's one thing. But the other thing is they're looking for enrollments and they don't know how to go about it, right? So
Yep.
a lot of times they'll do a lot of old school stuff. They'll have, and some of these things work, but they have limits. They're not scalable. They may have community events, or they did some print advertising or billboards sometimes, different
Right.
things, but they generally don't really have anyone uh, on their team who does an effective job digitally. Usually, their marketing department isn't a department; it's one person's part-time job. And so
Yep.
maybe they'll post some things on Facebook, and they're curious, why don't we get any enrollments? Well, just posting on your Facebook page is not marketing, right? And so they are attracted to us because of our industry focus, and we are a strategy first organization. We'll do an in-depth analysis of their website, but also their messaging on their website, of their digital footprint. And we do something called a digital marketing blueprint for schools, which is a paid service. It's a standalone paid service. We guarantee it. If they don't think it's worth what they paid, we will refund. You tell us what you think it's worth and we'll refund the rest, right? But we try to make it as risk-free as we can for them. But the whole idea is, before you start spending money with anyone, with us, any other agency, let's take a step back. Let's analyze, what's going on with your website, with your web presence, with your reviews, with how your enrollment team onboards, prospects, things like that. And then we design a solution which they own. We tell them you are free to work with your own internal staff, any third party of your choice. We would hope you want to work with us. And if you do, we can handle all of the things in the strategy that we put together for you.
And so that's interesting, right? So you do an audit of their
Mm.
existing strategy, you identify where the gaps are, and then you come up with a recommendation plan that they can either implement internally or they can source to you to be able to help execute on.
Right.
So that's interesting. So the one of the questions I have then, I think, that kind of comes off of that is, what sort of data do you use? Maybe the more likely question is how much data do they actually have that you can use or implement? Um, I feel like I know the answer to this question, but I actually wanted to ask it.
Yeah, you're probably right. They have nothing usable.
Yeah.
The only
Okay.
thing they do have is they know how many enrollments they currently have, and they know what their
Yeah.
enrollment goals are, which is
Yeah.
good information for me,
And
right?
there's always a very large gap between the two, right?
Yeah, usually it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, and this happens a lot of times. They'll say, we need to fill 60 seats up, and we only have 3 weeks before the
Yeah.
semester. Thanks for the lead time on that.
Yeah.
No, let's
Yeah.
get a little more realistic. You're already looking at, we may be able to pick up a few enrollments in this short period of time, but you're not going to meet those numbers. Let's start looking at the following semester.
Yeah. And so that's a really good question. So they, basically they don't have a lot of data. They are handed an enrollment goal that they may or may not have actually built themselves, right?
Mhm.
And typically you're challenged with trying to fill the gap without a tremendous amount of lead time. So how do you think about that? So one of the things that I when I talk to agencies who and honestly, it doesn't actually they don't even have to be like you specialize in education, right? But there are other agencies that specialize in manufacturing and
Sure.
health tech or whatever, right? And so but really the story is the same, right? Somebody will come to them and they will say, "Hey, I've got a lead goal that I need to hit for X number of deals that I need to close, right? Or it could be members that I need to sign up, or it could be whatever." And so that typically is always what happens. More often than not, they're typically handed the number, and the agencies that are sort of tasked with or coming up with a strategy are in a very similar situation to yours, where they're always starting out behind the eight ball, right?
Yeah.
Because their client or the point of contact out the client is always behind the eight ball. So I'm kind of
Mhm.
curious, like, how do you educate or set expectations for the client for what they should expect, especially considering they don't know what their own conversion funnel even looks like, and what the
Right.
steps are, what the stages are.
Yeah. Well, first off, their enrollment goals are usually pretty reasonable. What is not always reasonable is their time frame.
Yep.
Okay. So yes, this looks very achievable, but no, not in 3 weeks. Not right. But I have noticed over the last, and we've been doing this for a while, the last couple of years, they're starting to get a little more savvy in terms of the lead time, knowing that,
Mhm.
hey, in order to enroll someone by the fall, we have to get started in July.
Yeah.
So there is this sense that it does take a while. Now, in terms of the numbers, well, once I know what their marketing area is, we can do a budget analysis, which will tell us, all right, if we were going to run Google Ads, we know, if they paid this much or this much or this much, statistically, how many visits they would get, right? Well, a visit isn't a lead. A good website and a school with a good reputation will get more leads, right? And the opposite is true, right? But we can forecast with a pretty high degree of accuracy how many visits we can get. It's the same thing with social media. We can forecast about how many visits. So when we start working with those numbers with them, saying, all right, when someone calls your school, right? Um, what percentage of them do you actually turn into enrollments? Well, they usually have a fairly good idea, or at least they tell me they do, whether it's pie in the sky or not. But they seem pretty adamant that, oh yeah, we close about almost half our leads or whatever it is. So then you can start reverse engineering the numbers.
Yep. Yep.
You can start saying, okay, if you're paying $2,000 a month on Google Ads and you're getting 350 visits, and if 10% of them actually contact a school, that's 35 visits. Out of those 35 people who contact, not visits, 35 contacts, how many of them would you expect to close? Oh, and they say, well, and I might just go out and say, well, what if you close a third of them? Okay. So that's 11 or 12. Okay. What is the average value of a new enrollment to you? What is the lifetime value? Because one, consider a new enrollment. Two, consider future semesters where they're paying for that. Three, consider siblings, right? As the siblings become of age, parents want to send them to the same. Consider the neighbors, right? That where, you're talking to your neighbors, they may, consider the lifetime value of that, right? So if you're getting whatever 35, 36 contacts and you close 11 or 12 of them, and each one you close is worth $5,000, and your total marketing budget is $7,500, you're kind of ahead of the game, right? And when they start thinking in those terms, that it's not a cost, it's an investment. And then you go, look at the things that we're recommending to you. These are real people who are actively going to Google and Yahoo and Bing and searching for a school like yours. These are the amount of people, the reach for Facebook and Instagram in your area. What are the odds that you're not going to get any enrollments, right? And in so often, it only takes one, maybe two enrollments to offset their marketing costs,
Yep.
depending on what the tuition is, right?
So that's something that's interesting to me. I talk to agencies a lot every week, and one of the things that I typically hear a common theme is my client really actually doesn't know how to budget properly for the goal that they want to hit. So, they sort of are looking at either they're handed a budget, it's x number of dollars,
Yeah.
or they are hit, they're given a goal, right? An enrollment goal or a membership goal or a number of deals, closed one deals that they're targeted with, number of free trials, whatever, right? And that's typically handed to them from the finance department too. I guess I'm curious, how many of those, like when you're talking to clients, how often do those two things line up? Right. In other words, like the the goal is realistic. I see you smiling. So I just want
Oh,
to
I have strong
bring it
feelings on this.
yeah. So, it's just fascinating to me how often the budget is not built from the ground up, it's built from the top down, and what ends up happening is there's a misalignment between expectations and goal,
Yep.
and the marketer is already starting off behind, right?
Mhm.
And may not even be given a realistic goal. So what do
Right.
you tell a marketer that is a potential client of yours? Like, what do you tell them? How do you educate or help them?
Right. Okay. So, uh, got to make certain assumptions here, right? First off, you're right. And I'm talking specifically about schools. We work with other businesses as well, and other businesses will often run themselves like a business. Most schools do not. They're a bunch of smart people. They're educators. They're academics, but they're not business people, right? And so what happens is, if I ask what your budget is, I get an unusually low number, right? It is whatever is left over from them spending it on other things, right? So their marketing budget is always an afterthought, right? And so I kind of don't even ask them what their budget is anymore, right? I go the other way, right? I kind of tell them about what their budget should be, but the way that actually, only way for that to be effective is to make a business case for them. Like I was talking a few moments ago, I would say, if you had a $2,000 budget for Google Ads, you would get, in your geographic area, you'd get this many visitors, right? You can expect, if you have a good reputation, you'll get more contacts, bad reputation, less. But let's
Right.
think worst case. And the same way I broke it down before, to you, I break that down to them. And then they have something they can bring back to, it's usually the board, right? Right. So the board originally allocated what was ever left over. There's your marketing budget. Now they go back and they're going, oh, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can rearrange things and give you the budget.
Yeah.
Um, then it's a matter of fine tuning. Maybe it's like, well, we don't have $2,000 a month for that. We only have whatever 1,200. So I might say, oh, and they base it on the year. So I might say, all right, well, here's my suggestion. let's do the 2,000, but we're only going to do it for 6 months, right? At the end of 6 months, if you get all these enrollments, then you're going to have the money to continue. If you don't, well, look, we gave it our best shot. And that actually, it makes sense to them, you know?
So
So,
so I liked what you said a minute ago. You said, "Look, I want to shift these folks from thinking about marketing as an expense to thinking about marketing as an investment." And I think that's very true because ultimately what happens is you have a lot of marketers that are not able to articulate that themselves, right? They're they've got a CFO or somebody, right, that they're reporting into, and they have a hard time articulating or building a business case for why a certain amount of the budget is needed to be able to achieve the goal. And more importantly, and I think you said this earlier, that bears repeating, you have to be able to get leadership to understand like and they do, right? Typically if you're talking about at a board level or an executive level, they typically understand, typically anyway, you know uh, what the value of that customer is worth, or in your particular case, an enrollment is worth over the life of the opportunity or over the life of that customer. And so when they think about it in that perspective, the numbers get larger, right? I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but in your space, you know, there are there is the enrollment, there is the circle of influence that that enrollment has
mhm.
of friends and network and
Yep.
classmate potential, right? And then over multiple successive years that turn them, or semesters, or whatever the period of time is. And so when you think about it from a holistic LTV perspective, the value of that landed enrollment is much higher than maybe what you're originally thinking. So how do you do that? Like, how do you track opportunities that turn, or well, sorry, let me rephrase. How do you track leads that turn into opportunities that turn into enrollments that then over and track all the way through the lifetime of that enrollment to really get that figured out? And obviously that this is really a question about, clients that have been with you for a while, right? You've
Mhm.
established this process and you're working through it, where you've collected a lot of data. So I'm just kind of curious, like, how do you think about it from, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
first
There's a
draft
there's a
user to
broken
customer?
yeah, there's a broken link in that chain, right?
Mm,
That's the actual enrollment. So we can track all activity like phone calls, emails, submitted forms, even submitted applications, but we can't track actual enrollments. The school can track actual enrollments. We don't have access to that particular type of CRM, in most cases, right? That's their internal numbers. So we don't actually know how many enrollments that they have unless they volunteer to us. Then we don't know, well, how many of those enrollments just happen to be siblings from uh, families that were already enrolled with the school, right? That we had no effect on. We can't take credit for, right? And so, generally speaking, I would love to be able to track that, to actually follow that path, but it breaks when it comes to the enrollment. So, what
so you
we
lose that
determined was,
visibility
yeah,
at the
we, we
okay, at
we
the
lose
CRM.
visibility at the enrollment stage, right?
Mhm.
Or the sale, if you call it the sale, right?
Sure.
Uh, but we know from experience if we're getting if we're doing a good job, right? So we can tell by the amount of phone calls, the quality of the calls, because we actually record the calls and we listen to them, right? We know what the proper percentages are. Now, if they drop the ball on their end, we'd love to help them, but we don't necessarily know they dropped the ball on their end. So at the end of the day, they will tell us that they have a sense that you know, we're doing great. It's like our enrollments are up, over last year. You guys are doing a great job, even though they can't make the connection. They know that, I mean, they philosophically know make the connection because we can tell them what we've delivered, but they go on faith that those phone calls, those emails, those submitted forms, a percentage of them did turn into actual paying enrollments.
So it'd be interesting to find out, like obviously they have multiple channels, right, of people that are campaigns that are coming in and generating enrollments. It would be interesting to take the um, CRM data, right, and be able to tie that back to a lead and figure out whether like how much of it was sourced from your particular efforts, your campaign efforts or not. And so obviously you get the form fill, right? You can track all the way through to form fill.
Mhm.
Maybe not phone call unless you have a unique like a unique phone number, unique 800 number, right, specific to your campaign. But specifically, you can track through to form fill, um, which you would do in either something like SharpSpring or HubSpot or whatever, whatever
Right.
your solution is, right? And then within that, it passes through to their, you're handing off the lead to um, their enrollment team. And then so there's no way to post back or get that additional information back out of their CRM or their enrollment system because you're saying it's pretty well closed at that point. Is
Well,
that
their
right?
CRMs could be anything. Like we'll use SharpSpring for the CRM for marketing, but once a lead turns into an enrollment, they have typically have a school specific CRM. So that
Yep.
lead now comes out and it goes into another CRM.
Yep.
Right. Now, I
Is
will
there
tell you this though, enrollment in most cases is a big ticket item, right? It's a big decision for a family.
Yep.
If it's a charter school, well, it's just choosing the right school. If it's a private school, well, parents got it's a big they have a lot of money they have to pay potentially, right?
Yep.
Um, uh, what because so the actual enrollments are relatively manageable. In other words, the school will actually recognize names. So we're completely transparent. We let them log into our system. They can see who called, when they called, how long the call lasted, the phone number of the person who called. They can listen to the voice recording, not a message, but an actual back and forth conversation. Same thing with emails, and they can look at it and go, "Oh, Jill Smith. Yes, they just signed the paperwork today." So they actually will have a better
Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
of the success of these programs than I do because I don't know that Jill Smith enrolled,
Right.
but they know we sent Jill Smith to them.
Right. And they are not able is there privacy laws or something that prohibits them from being able to just export out at the end of a campaign period or the end of every month or something like that, the actual CRM into like a spreadsheet or CSV?
Um, there are some privacy laws regarding children about questions you can ask and things like that, but I don't
Right.
believe exporting a list of families. I don't think there's anything prohibitive about that.
So that would be interesting, right? Is you could create your own closed loop report based on their CRM export, right, out of their enrollment system and
Right.
tie it back to your leads, that you've captured. The
Mhm.
other thing that I've seen happen a lot in recent years is folks will like agencies will come along and then they will take the leads that they're creating, right, and then they will do a campaign after that that is like a re-engagement campaign or something like that that
Yeah.
actually will tell you whether or not they converted, right, at whatever stage, like to an enrollment in your case, or maybe it's to a customer in a different, if it's in manufacturing or something. But you see that a lot too, where
Yeah,
it just
and we've
ties
used
back.
that as well. I mean,
Yeah.
SharpSpring has lead scoring,
Yep.
And, there's a point where, we sign a value to, every action by the candidate, the prospect, or the family, if you will. And there's a point where, hey, come on, this family has opened up every email. They've clicked
Right.
on 80% of it. They've downloaded
Yeah.
stuff. Come on, get them
Yeah.
in here for a tour, right? Whereas
Yeah.
someone else may have clicked on the first two emails and nothing after that. Well, wait a minute. They clicked on
Yeah.
the
That's right.
first two. So there was something there, but they're just not ready. So now we can loop them back in the beginning of next semester,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
Because there was, they're probably a good candidate, but something they just weren't ready yet. So let's
Or
not lose
or
them.
or to a login button, right? You just tag a login button, or you tag a, some call to action that is on the site that, you know, you can identify that they are in fact, a conversion, right? And being able to do that and tie it back to the life of the lead and say, yep, this was a conversion, I think is also really powerful. In a lot of ways, you know more than maybe the actual school does about, not only obviously is what is driving enrollment, but also, how many of those people are converting because of your efforts.
Oh yeah.
Um, and my guess is it's probably larger than you're getting credit for. If because I see there's a lot of agencies that have that same exact problem where they're saying, "Hey, I know this is working because I can see this behavior is happening,
Yeah.
but I'm only getting credit for like half of it because it's not a direct conversion from point A to point B." So
Yeah.
there's a little bit of an attribution issue there, and it it behooves you, right? Just like it behooves some of these other agencies that I talk to be able to close that loop and get that behavior happening. And one other thing I would just point out too that I've seen really super successful recently is the use of Zapier, right?
Hmm.
So like what'll happen is Zapier ties in very cleanly with whatever the back end system is, like it's a conversion or some behavior that happens that you call a conversion. Um, and then you just tie it back to the original lead record and
Yeah.
show that that it's closed looped,
Yeah.
where you've marked that opportunity closed won or whatever whatever the language is in your space.
Yeah, yeah, we've used Zapier multiple times in conjunction with SharpSpring um, for a variety of things. Our
Yeah.
challenge, I mean, since we're talking about what's unique to us in this industry,
Yep.
is
Yep.
there are all these different CRMs, not the marketing CRMs, but the school CRMs. There's a whole bunch of them, and they use different ones, and some of them use spreadsheets. I mean, they're not really that well organized. And what's happened is a lot of these school specific CRMs kind of evolved in their own little universe, right? So they weren't designed to communicate with
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
else,
They're very
that
closed
that sort
looped.
of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
the difference between working with like a business, like manufacturing or something like that, and working with a school, the school, their expectations seem to be more binary. In other words, are we making more enrollments? Are we meeting our goals? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, they just keep writing the checks, right? If the answer is no, we have to find out what's going wrong. What can we do on our end? What should they be doing?
Right.
And I'll give you something like a big variable is the reputation of the school. I
Yeah.
mean, it is so no, there's no parent who discovers a school and doesn't check their reviews. That would
Right.
be irresponsible as a parent, right?
Right.
And so you have some schools and they're saying, well, those are old reviews and, we had some trouble back in the day. And I'm going, well, we got to get a reviews acquisition program going so we can dilute those reviews,
Yep.
right? So that's maybe part of our strategy. Conversely, you have a school and you're going, wow, yeah, they got uh, uh, 500 reviews, an average 4.8. I'm going, all we got to do is get them to the website. So
Yeah.
that's a big deal. That's a huge variable is the school itself. And
Yeah.
here's something else that's a big variable is how they follow up. And this would be the same for any business, I think, right? So the follow up comes in three flavors, right? So we'll work with a school or business that when we send them a lead, they are all over it. I mean, immediately they're returning a call. They are following up with an email or a text, or there's someone there to chat, right? And they get the best results because this is a very, spontaneous gratification society now. I want to know about a school now, not tomorrow or later in the week, right? So those who have, speed to lead, very successful, but that's the kind of the minority in this particular industry, right? More popular is lead follow-up is someone else's part-time job. And so they
Yeah.
have a tendency to bundle the leads to, Thursday or something. I'm going to sit down and just go through
Based on
all
the
these leads.
convenience factor for them, not the buyer.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And it's too late. Right. If they
Yeah.
found you on search, that means you're not the only
Yeah.
person to show up in the search
Yeah.
results.
Yeah.
People
They're
already
already in a
know you're over
conversation
there.
with somebody
Yeah.
else. Yeah,
Then
absolutely.
we've even done secret shopper work where they're going, we're not getting any leads. We're going, but we're
Yeah.
sending them tons of leads, right? And so
Yeah.
we do we stooge it. In other words, we call through the system, like we're a fan.
Yep.
We just
Yep.
follow the whole thing,
Yep.
leave a message, whatever. No
Mhm.
one gets back to us. So
Yeah.
we go back to the school and we tell them what we did, and they're going, well, where's that email going? And we tell them, and they go, oh, I don't know who's monitoring that, but you gave us that email. And you don't know anyone. I mean, you're paying us
Yeah.
good money to send
Yeah.
leads to that email address,
Yeah.
and you don't have anyone assigned
So
to monitor it, right?
so what's fascinating to me is every single scenario you're describing right now is a scenario that some other agency in some other sector or business area, again, I pick up, or I mentioned things like manufacturing or, membership programs or what have you. It's all the same, right? It's always the same scenario. And, it's fascinating to me that you're seeing that. I do want to go back to one thing though, because I think this would be really interesting to find out. Schools are very, um, they know that their ratings and their reviews, their reputation is one of the biggest factors, right? To whether or not a student or a prospect becomes a student. Is that an accurate statement?
You would, they do when I bring it up, they have that realization, but I don't think they ever assign the sense of urgency to it that it deserves.
So it would be neat to see how amenable they would be to, because there isn't, I completely understand what you were saying earlier about having like these custom like industry specific ERP CRM solutions that are, only like what the school uses. However, there is a way to like export that student data, right? And then you take that data and then tie it into something like SharpSpring to figure out exactly what you're doing. But if you did that under with the dual pretext of, hey, look, we're going to create a review system for you, if you review process for you that helps you push down, poor reviews, get you more of the good reviews,
Right.
right? All you have to do is send us your student information. We'll do the outreach for you, right?
Well,
You
we
approve the
offer that.
copy, whatever. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
help you do that. But the other dual benefit is, you know, then who in your own CRM in SharpSpring is actually a lead that came from you,
Mhm.
because these are actually students, right? That are
Yeah.
from your enrollment period.
Yeah. Yeah, we
So you can
offer an enrollment service, if you will. It's a
uh-huh,
third party we use, but it's
right.
very inexpensive. But quite frankly, part of what we do on our retainer based clients is we coach them on how to do their outreach.
Yeah,
I have to tell them that reviews are naturally skewed negative because
absolutely.
the analogy I use is I say you go to a department store and you buy a vacuum cleaner and you bring it home and it works. You don't go, woohoo, my vacuum cleaner sucks, which is great because
Right.
it's a vacuum cleaner. I'm going to go to Yelp and write a review. Well, it's
That's
because
right.
you got what you expected. It worked,
Right.
and that's, that you, but if it didn't work, and you brought it back and the customer service person was rude and you didn't get a satisfaction, that's when you're going to write the review. Okay.
That's right.
In order to reshuffle that deck, you have to be proactive and go out and request reviews, right? So you could use Net Promoter Score. You do, so we encourage surveys. From the surveys, we can figure out the Net Promoter Score. They can go out and solicit that family to leave a review.
Yep.
And they never necessarily assign the amount of importance, which, you and I know that's a make or break, for
Yes.
any business, but a school
100%.
where my precious children are going, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
in other words, reviews, we offer a very inexpensive outreach scenario, but we'll just coach them on how to do it, because if a school is getting enrollments, the lifetime relationship with that school could go on in perpetuity. No matter how good we are, no matter how good they think we are, and that we're doing our job, if they're not getting the enrollments, they don't have the money to spend with us, and they're going to have to do something else, even though
Yep.
they'll admit, like, we're fine. So it behooves us to coach them on other things to get them the enrollment so that they have the money to continue to pay us.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. There is a customer life cycle, um, enrollment life cycle. I don't know what the proper term is for it in your industry, but
I
there is
just
that
call it a
element.
shelf life.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And then there's that back and forth communication that you have that feeds everything else that you're doing too.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that's super fascinating. So I have a million questions, but I know we're sort of coming up on time. I did have one other. Well, actually, I have two more questions. One would be, where do you, like, you've been doing this a long time, right? You have a lot of experience, and you are um, you're very focused on your particular niche, right? And so that's why people are coming to you. But I'm curious, like, where do you get your own content? Where do you consume information? Where do you hang out to get more information, to sharpen your skills, to stay up on the latest and newest information, newest technology that's out there? Like, where do you, like, do you follow people on LinkedIn? Do you get information from various newsletters? Like, where do you get
Yeah.
your information?
Well, yeah, I do follow certain people. I like Andy Crestodina,
Yeah,
Orbit Media.
I
I
know
love
Andy.
that
Yeah,
guy. I've
he's
seen him
great. Yeah,
live a bunch of times. I have had lunch with him.
yeah,
His stuff is so usable.
yeah. We've
It's
had him
just
on
so
this
usable.
show, by the way.
Oh, did you? Oh,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
I want
yeah,
to.
yeah.
Oh, I got to
Andy's
track down
great.
that link.
Yeah,
He's one of my
Andy's great.
favorites.
Yeah,
Um, Neil Patel always comes up with something a little salesy, but his stuff makes a lot of sense. Maz, Rand Fishkin used to come up with a lot of stuff. These are all things that I follow myself, and I just come across things. But a lot of it is just peer to peer sharing. Okay,
yeah,
I'm a member of a couple of digital marketing groups, and then one's a mastermind group, and so you get it like owner to owner type of stuff.
yeah,
That's really really good high level sophisticated stuff. The other is I'm a member of an international network of digital marketing consultants called WSI.
yeah.
Um, I'm part of what's called the agency model, but
Yep,
there's got to be 1,100 or more offices worldwide,
yep.
and there's a lot of sharing going on there. So I consume a lot on my own. What piques my interest, and then a lot of the really good stuff is peer to peer. You know.
So you said, like, peer to peer digital mastermind. Like, what facilitates that? Is that like a Facebook group? Is that some other, like? Is that a LinkedIn community? Like, what are those?
Oh,
Or
it's
is it
all of
just
the above. Uh,
okay?
yeah.
So they're
Well, I
so
mean,
they're
well, for example, WSI, we have global conventions. where
Yep.
we go to Cancun or we go wherever, and it's a mega convention with keynote speakers, and I've delivered some sessions there as well, breakout sessions. Then they have the online versions of that. Our digital marketing group is a Slack group where with different channels that we have an employment channel, people who have someone, they need someone, or they have someone that they have to let go, someone else might, that sort of
Yep.
thing. And we have an owners channel, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And we meet once a year somewhere. Last
Yeah.
October it was in Las Vegas, and this coming up will be this
Yeah.
October, St. Augustine, Florida.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of actually really being in a room with real people, and a
Yeah.
combination with regularly scheduled online, topics, presentations, things like that. And,
So
it's so important to stay plugged into all of these things. You know,
it really is. Yeah.
Jason Swank, he's another one that,
Mhm.
I worked with
Yep.
him going
Yep.
back years. And, I tune in with his stuff periodically these days.
Yep.
But yeah,
He's been on the show too.
just
Yeah.
survey. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
he's everywhere.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
survey
Yeah.
these notables, and you don't have to listen to every word. Like I
Mhm.
might check some of these podcasts that they have, and I'm going, I'm not interested in this one. Well, I know what he's going to say for this one, or I'm going, oh, this looks new, right? But I check in with all of these things, so at my leisure, I'm constantly being plugged in, but I'm pretty discriminating on where I want to spend my time.
That's got it. Yeah. I mean, I think everybody is, right? And you have to be very selective about what kind of content you take in and how much of it is fluff versus real actionable information that can help you do a better job, right?
Mm.
And I think there's an opportunity cost to consuming information that doesn't actually help make you better, right? As an agency.
Yeah.
So okay, so last question then. What we've talked about some of these, but I want to dive into this really quickly. What is the typical Martech stack look like for your clients? And then some of this could be like what you have recommended to the client, what the client is already using. We've already talked a little bit about what they use for their enrollment system, and those are typically industry or education specific. But what else? Like so things like the all the way from what kind of channels, analytics, marketing automation, like what tools do they typically use? You mentioned Moz a minute ago. I know that was on the information side, but I'm just fascinated to like sort of hear what tools that your typical clients are using or agencies are recommending.
Well, let's see here. We have pared our service offerings down so that we can be really good. In other words, the philosophy is be better at less things. Okay. So we look at four pillars, right, for all of our clients: site, search, social, and conversion. Site being a website, right? We prefer to build our websites on a platform called Encord. Okay. We were like patient zero with them, like 5, 6 years ago. And so we're inside, and we have given our druthers, we will put all of our clients' websites a hosted solution. It's stable, it's easy to customize. We are not big fans of WordPress. It's hackable, then you're dealing with templates. And I mean, we're just not a WordPress shop. If we inherit a WordPress site, we'll work with it. But if we build a website from scratch, we're not going to build it on WordPress. So site, we use something called Encord. Search. Now, search comes in two flavors: organic search and paid search. For on organic search, well, you got to do the work, right? It's not necessarily a platform that we're using, right? For a paid search, we use a bid management system, but I'm not at liberty to say what it is. And I don't want to be all mysterious and everything, but it's just an agreement I have right now. We use a bid management system to aid us in actually doing that. Social, you use the native tools for Facebook and Instagram. Um, we had one time we had used Hootsuite for certain things. If our client is say using SharpSpring, we can use that tool. SharpSpring is our CRM. If it's, I mean, we're HubSpot certified and SharpSpring certified, right? However, we haven't really used HubSpot in a while. It's a wonderful tool. But it's kind of overkill for what we need to do for our clients. SharpSpring is our CRM of choice. If it's just drip email marketing, I'm just amazing how this worked out. Constant contact, right? So if we're just doing some drip email marketing, or if a client has, we try to be platform agnostic with that. So
Yep.
if the client shows up with their own CRM, at the end of the day, there are good CRMs that do the job, different price points. Some of them have more bells and some more whistles. But at the end of the day, if they bring something to us, we can kind of figure it out. They kind of do the same thing. You just got to find it in a different place, that sort of thing. So,
Hmm.
but if we're bringing something to the table, we're bringing Encore for our web development platform. We're bringing SharpSpring for our CRM.
Interesting. And then those tie into other things that are happening, analytics, Google Analytics, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh yeah, we have something called Uberall
Hmm.
for some of the analytics. We were using Google Data Studio for a while,
Hmm.
but and honestly, we put together our own dashboard, right? So what would
Yep.
happen is the client can log in 24/7 and they can click this button and go check their paid advertising, this button, check their social media, click on this button, their Google Analytics, and this button, they can schedule a call with one of our analysts. Like it goes to their calendar link and they
Yep.
can get a more, something else we just started doing this, right? We want to be better at customer service in terms of uh, touching, touching the client more frequently on a regular basis, right?
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so what we started doing is instead of having to schedule all these things out, like a meeting with the client, and trying to coordinate that, is
Right.
now, and we're just starting this. We're doing our reviews all by ourselves and recording it. With the client. In other words, if I'm doing a review with you on your website, I'm going to be talking and showing you stuff like. Well, we do it now without the client. Then we send them a link and they can actually watch it. So it has all of the benefits of a personal relationship, right? And going over everything and sharing the screen,
Yep.
but it doesn't have the scheduling issues
Yeah.
associated with that. And they can then share it with their team or their board or whoever they want to share it with. So we just started doing that. So now we'll do that we'll check our KPIs minimum weekly for each client. We'll do the recorded review monthly, although clients have 24/7 access to the data. And then we'll reach out either on demand or quarterly. We'll do our like personal one-on-one extravagant reviews with them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. More of the quarterly like QBR kind of reports.
yeah,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
great. Yeah. So I think what's interesting to me is like there's just as I listen to these different types of responses from multiple people, like um, they do typically break down to like what's happening in platform, what's happening on site, and what's happening, from the lead capture, nurture, conversion. That's typically going to be something like marketing automation and CRM. So those are like the three big categories or buckets
hmm
that people tend to put them in.
yeah.
So cool. Well, I think we're actually over on time, Chuck. I appreciate just the conversation, and there's a lot of, like as we were talking about before, there's a lot of the types of challenges that you are solving for clients that do translate to other other industries as well. So I appreciate that, and certainly like I think a lot of our listeners are going to sort of see that and see where those commonalities are. I guess for anybody who's listening, Chuck, how do people get a hold of you? In case they hear something on the podcast and they're like, you know what, I'd really like to reach out to him and just ask him a question.
Okay.
How would
Well,
they?
I'll give you
What's
three
the easiest way?
ways, right?
Hmm.
First, LinkedIn. There aren't a lot of Chuck Bankoffs on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
so that's an easy way. Two, to email directly, Chuck at creativewebworks.com. That's creative with a K, not a C. Chuck at creativewebworks.com. And then, or just go directly to creativewebworks.com and, you know, fill out a form, send an email.
Great. Chuck, it was great having you. I enjoyed it.
Well, it was fun, Eric. Didn't know what to expect, but it was, we should have scheduled it later in the day and I would have had a beer or something. How'd that feel
Next
about it?
time. Next time. Absolutely. All right.